We are back. Patriots Lament, back on air. Episode 460.
After a 2-month hiatus.
After a 2-month hiatus, that's right. Much anticipated return. There's been a lot going on. We've actually had some people who listen to the show say, hey, you guys got to get back on the air. There's too much going on. And the news is crazy. They're lying to us through their teeth at every turn. So we finally made it back. I think we've all been going through a lot of transitions into summer here. So it's been busy. But yeah, number one thing we wanted to start off with was regular people calling BS on all of the stuff that's going on right now. Like basically anything that you're told is important or significant or happening, almost everybody, especially so-called normal people, know that it is made up or exaggerated or pushed down their throat. Yeah. So examples. I have made my way from Canada back to Alaska for the summer, and before leaving, there's a couple working class guys who I'm buddies with there. One of them's a welder. One of them works at a wood mill, and they both either just don't care anymore. They're like, I just want to get back to work, or my one buddy sort of identified everything. He's like, this feels like a training run. This feels like we're being set up for something here. But yeah, they don't buy the narrative. The only people who buy the narrative are people who, I don't know, people who benefit from it, people who watch the news too much. But a lot of regular people I know not buying it. Josh, you said there was some shows in New England you were listening to.
Yeah.
That went in that direction too.
Yeah, from not just believers. I mean, they were, they sounded like regular. Well, I guess they are kind of media, but they just swallowed everything and pushed it and pushed the fear. I mean, and stayed true all the way up till, Massachusetts is one of the most restrictive, and when they could walk on a golf course but couldn't play golf, they were, we're doing this for a reason. Now they're just like, screw them. Did you see that? They a bunch of liars. And complete reversal. They don't believe anything anymore. And now they're saying that on the airwaves. So it's, people they pushed it too long, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. We were talking about all the different ways that there are a few people who have kind of taken a further position on it, saying that the whole thing's made up. David Icke being one of them, and it's been interesting seeing how, like, one approach to this whole situation was, okay, like, take information as it comes and adjust your position as new information comes out. That's a fine stance to take. But a lot of people went real hard line real early, like this is, the bubonic plague or worse. And it's been funny seeing the narrative adjustment that everyone's had to take. Well, it ended up not being bad because of the lockdown, except the places that didn't do any lockdown had the same outcome as places that did, or better. There's another one out there. There's one I've seen that is somewhat plausible, which is that the diseases and stuff mutate, and this one's mutated into one that's basically entirely benign. And yet the whole, we can't go back to work until everybody's vaccinated line continues. And you were saying that the guys you listened to in New England, one of the things they talked about was the control narrative.
Mm-hmm.
How did they identify that? I'm trying to remember how you said that.
I am too.
Basically, It had to do with how they were easing up
Oh, right.
the restrictions,
Yeah.
and basically the restrictions are being. Oh yeah, the guy was easing up the guy they listened to said, I don't think that the protests that are going on are a health risk. Basically, he said, I think it's more important that people have the right to protest than
Right.
that they be quarantined. But that's not
Unless.
true if they're protesting the quarantine.
Right. Yep. That was it. That was the kicker for him.
In fact, I
They
saw a
should be
story.
allowed to protest anything except the isolation. Yeah,
That
yeah.
was
What's up, Mike?
that
Yeah,
was
in
signed
fact,
by like 1,300 doctors. That statement.
Okay.
I saw something where the Hasidic Jews had put up a sign that they were protesting the police killing, so that they could gather at their synagogue.
Ah, that's
Ooh,
brilliant.
brilliant.
So, so yeah,
David,
it's
earlier,
legal to gather for your state worship, but not for your godly worship, right?
David, you had mentioned the wait and see thing, and I said that for a while, and the problem with wait and see is that if that becomes your whole, there's no endpoint, right?
Mhm.
When do you have enough information to make some sort of a decision? So early March, I said that I was looking at the videos coming out of China, and those, as any indicator, made it look much worse. And I don't know, maybe the videos were staged, or maybe they were just taking a very authoritarian. I think in light of the protests and the rioting that's been going on in the U.S., that could have been their crackdown, and they were using that as a way of getting ahead of what was coming.
Okay, you think
And
they?
so that's why the videos looked so bad, but it also gave the virus narrative much more potency and fear.
So what was the purpose of the theatrical videos? Run that by me again.
I don't know. Well, what I'm saying is that the videos looked a lot worse than how everything turned out to be here.
Mhm.
And part of the videos, I think what was shocking about the videos was the state action. And my thought was that, well, for the state to act that way, the situation has to be really bad. But that's not necessarily the case, right?
Oh, sure.
In
Welding
the
buildings shut,
context
stuff like that.
in the context of the last month, of the last few weeks, that could have just been the state being the state, but it generated a whole scenario that looked a lot worse than it actually was.
Hmm.
Yeah, I tend to look. Yeah, it's a good point. I tend to think it was less of a conspiracy and more a chain reaction of panicked reactions. And if you go back to, was it 2003? They had the SARS coming out of China, and China got it kind of got reamed for their supposed lack of reaction to that. And so you fast forward to the first videos that were coming out of China, and there wasn't a lot of state action in those. It was, oh, here's a video of a guy falling over in the street, and the that was when the first coronavirus rumor or information was coming out. So someone's out their apartment window, and they're taping a guy, or videoing a guy who falls over in the street next to some checkpoint, or whatever it is, and say, oh no, coronavirus. So that goes viral, right? Well, then the state looks at it, the Chinese state looks at it and says, oh, look what happened back in 2003 with SARS. We better start sending people out in hazmat suits. So that starts to develop. And so rather than it being a conspiracy, it's just a chain reaction of panic, because someone said there's this unknown new virus that's of the coronavirus family out. I tend to lean that direction. I don't know. What do
Yeah.
you guys think?
Well, that's funny because even with that, even with the like extreme authoritarianism,
Mhm.
um, the right wing wackos in the U.S. are still saying that the Chinese set us up for this and they lied about it
Yeah.
and they sent this disease as a bioweapon across and and like to anybody. I mean, we were talking about this in January, and Josh in Seattle was telling us about these videos and stuff in December. So it's not like
Mm-hmm.
this was secret information or something like that.
Yep.
Mhm.
And
But yeah,
and
there's that
maybe
that could totally be the case, Mike.
and part of
Yeah.
that might be that the U.S. state, along the lines of what Dave was just saying, not trusting China, then overreacting what they're seeing from the side of distrust. So
Mhm.
doubling the overreaction.
Yeah, and if you remember Rahm Emanuel's statement, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." This is, it's brought the opportunity uh, uh, to basically bring in a brave new world. Let me look up a quote real quick. Um, Maybe later we can talk about the website I pulled this off of. Um, Here's a quote. A great revolution is waiting for us. The crisis doesn't only make us feel free to imagine other models, another future, another world, it obliges us to do so. That's from the former French President Nicolas Sarkozy, September 2008. And so this has happened to be the crisis, although it's a panic about nothing, a crisis to bring in that new revolution that they were imagining.
Mm.
Now, uh, the site I brought that off of, and we can talk about it later if you guys want to, it's UNNWO.org. And this is the United Nations New World Order website. Now, that's actually their website title.
That's not a conspiracy site.
No, it's not.
What?
I'm serious. Guys, go to
I'm on my way there now.
NWO or UNNWO.org.
You know what's funny? Our
Mhm.
video episode. Oh wow, you were not kidding. Oh man.
Holy cow! Let's take our planet back.
Let me share this. Our video.
Oh,
Which episode would it have been? I'm gonna look up the episode number. We did one called the New World Order,
yeah.
and Corey noted that YouTube gave us
A
a
banner,
little warning. Yeah,
information banner.
an
Oh, that's
information
right.
banner. Here it is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull it up. Here, let me show you guys this. This is just awesome. Is pretty much what it is.
Mike is just a darn good investigative journalist.
That's for sure. That is
What I
for
wanna
sure.
Yeah.
Let
So,
me screen share this.
oh, okay. Yeah, you
Yeah,
got
keep
it.
going. Keep going.
Cool. Yeah. So the motto on this page, very first thing you see is "Let's take our planet back." Now, can you guys imagine the stupidity of this quote being made by the very same people who screwed up the planet? Are people really going to buy this? Actually, yes, they will. Um, let's read the about part. The United Nations New World Order Project is a global high-level initiative founded in 2008 to advance a new economic paradigm, a new political order, and more broadly, a new world order for humankind, which achieves the UN's global goals for sustainable development by 2030 and the happiness, well-being, and freedom of all life on Earth by 2050. Now, then you go down, it has
Easy to do when there's not many people.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Agenda 2030.
Mm-hmm. And there's some good stuff at the bottom here too. You have that up? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So we did an episode 437 on March 21st, and we titled it "The New World Order" because we were talking about that being implemented, and YouTube felt the need to inform our listeners that the New World Order, or NWO, is claimed by various conspiracy theorists to be emerging clandestine totalitarian world government. And then it actually, yeah, because that's what it is. And then here's UNNWO.com. Let's take our planet back. The United Nations New World Order Project. Like, I mean, come on. Like, it's not even, they're not even making it hard anymore.
Well, they're conspiracy theorists, obviously.
Yeah, where's the little info box here?
Yeah, isn't that great?
Brutal.
They just tell you what their plan is right out of the gate, and they do that. Yeah, I mean that's what's said about them, that they that's how the cult works. They have to tell
Sure.
you what they're going to do.
Revelation
Now,
of the
scroll back up, Dave.
Okay.
I want to show you something.
Okay.
Right there. See that heart?
Here.
The heart in the wheat. Right back down just a little bit. Go back down.
Yes.
And
Okay.
stop. Here's their economic system. Happytalism.
Yeah.
Now let's remember to replace that with utopia, and you can see.
Sounds better than capitalism.
Right.
Happytalism? There's
Happytalism.
adult people wrote that?
Yes, and let me pull this up here so you guys can.
Whatever happened to the good old tyrants?
Now there's a website called happytalism.com. So go to happytalism.com. And
I want to join them.
Oh my word!
Happytalism.com.
And there's happytalism.world, I think, has the description of happytalism. Let's see if I can get it up.
It's right here, right? It's this one.
Yeah, there's this join us button. Oh, hang on, wait, let me go back. Yeah, that's it. Now,
Are they gonna send me a newsletter?
Yeah, happytalism.world. Yeah,
you wanted to join.
Yeah.
Oops.
If you go to happytalism.world, you can find a description of it. And
your spot has been reserved.
Yeah.
Good.
I don't. Should I read the description? It's a few paragraphs long here.
Here, let me get it. It's here.
Let's see. It's happytalism.world, and
this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
A new human development system?
Disruptive innovation. You guys have heard about disrupt, right? Sounds bad, but it's actually good.
David, will you scroll back?
I just used the smart pipe at smart pipe.
Yeah. Go back where?
To the top, where it showed the kid in the right. New theories on human development.
Ooh, this will be good.
Yeah.
Isn't that someone what the Germans tried to do back in the 30s and 40s?
Yeah.
Tried some new theories of human development.
Right. Now, if you search through that website, you'll find the description. And it's very new agey. And it starts out like this. Every natural entity exists within a dynamic ecosystem. Whether you look at the world from the atomic level through a microscope or reflect on the powerful cyclical flow of the seasons, this observation rings true. Natural ecosystems contain all life, and they are driven by dynamic energy force that cannot be silenced. There's no description of an economic system here. There's a description of basically this sounds like a shyster trying to sell you a piece of bad real estate for an investment and promising you'll get rich out of it. That's literally
or at least happy.
Like. Yeah.
Are more likely to enjoy being sick in bed than enjoy your work?
Yeah, you are when you're not allowed to go work.
It is the pursuit of happytalism, more than just a lifestyle ethos or moral philosophy. Happytalism is a human development paradigm that taps into the dynamic energy of human existence and use it to bring out the best in all of us. Now, of course, this is all just gobbledygook. It doesn't mean anything. There's nothing here of any substance whatsoever. There's no description of an economic paradigm. All there is new age meditation bullcrap. And I guess you're supposed to feed yourself with it. Oh, no. The New World Order will feed you whatever gruel they come up with. But that's the plan.
Well, you'll be happier than if you were working for it.
Right.
What else is going on this UN NWO? What's this?
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it's just it's vague. There's
What's
again,
that Islam symbol in the middle? Or is
Which-
that Hindu?
which one? The one in the middle there with
yeah.
the wheat?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a star in the middle with a path coming out of it.
Path to the stars.
United Nations International Day of Happiness.
Shut the stars.
Yeah, it's the United Nations International Day of Happiness. And
Recognizes happiness as a fundamental human right.
Yes.
Holy
cow. So does happiness work? Right.
No.
Is what and why not? Because that's the metric that is used to gauge lots of different societies and economic systems. And there's the studies that show that people in Scandinavia are the happiest people, or that's what the studies say. Why?
Let's stick together.
If happiness isn't the thing to chase, then what is?
No, that's a good question, and it's kind of the rabbit hole I wanted to go down today.
I think that image on the left with the colors on the face, I think that's the same stock photo that's on Peterson's Big Five personality traits.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Okay.
I can't tell.
Yeah.
Understand myself.
Right. Yeah. One thing I've read about the metrics of happiness.
It is.
I think it's Sweden. Yeah. Yeah. And in Sweden, they have a tendency to want to give a positive answer because they feel obligated to. Because that's kind of a patriotic thing to do.
Because they've been told they're the happiest country, or what?
Yeah. We got to be the happiest. It's kind of like it's like a pep rally at your high school. We're the best. We got to be the happiest. We got to be the winners.
Okay, but so this is what everyone's striving towards, is happiness, right? Is there evidence to show that actually works in the long run?
Well, let's think about people who win the lottery, or people who in Hollywood who all end up on drugs because they're trying to seek happiness. They have everything they could ever want, right? They go out and buy
materially.
At least that's what people think. They can go out and they can buy their yacht.
So what is the connection between material well-being and happiness? Like,
there isn't?
Is there one? Okay.
There isn't. Yeah. So
who's going to believe that?
Drugs. Right. Well, that's the thing. That's how they're selling it. That's why they're shysters. They're selling bullcrap. And people want to be happy. That's the goal, right? People want to be happy. But even when they're filthy rich, they end up on drugs because they're seeking happiness. And
it's a byproduct. It's not a fundamental.
Exactly. They're seeking happiness, and and what they're doing is, again, linear thinking. They want the fun downhill ride without the uphill ride. When they're going uphill, it's like it never ends. Where's the end? It's a linear thinking, right? There's no end. But when you get to the top, then you get the happiness of going back down, the fun ride going down. Like when I rode over to your house this morning to drop off that note, Dave. Going uphill, it hurt. Why did I go out this morning and ride up the hill? I'm getting to that. The goal should not be happiness. The goal should be pain, because you can't have happiness without having the pain to compare it to. And I realized this morning that we should not be seeking happiness. We should seek pain, because when we seek happiness, we become suckers for people who want to sell us crap.
Yeah, that's a lot like.
And we never get the situation to compare it to. Why should we be happy if we don't have something to compare it to? It's all relative, right? So I realized every day we should be seeking pain, because that is going to keep us from becoming distracted and falling for this shysterism being sold by to us by the UN.
So you're saying it's not so much the absolute state, but the contrast between
the contrast.
suffering and happiness.
Right. If you live in a world that's all green, you don't know what any of the other colors are. You want to live in a world with green and red and blue and all of that, because otherwise you can't see what's out there. You can't experience what other stuff there is.
You can't just be on MDMA all the time.
You can, and it burns out hard. There's a Peterson Meaning Wave song. I actually want to put it on right now. Let me see if it'll work. Let me know if the audio is working here. Share screen, application window. There we go. Let's see if it works.
Akira. He's got every social animal, and even many animals who aren't social, are embedded in a dominance hierarchy. Okay, let's go. Dominance hierarchy has a structure. We couldn't call it a dominance hierarchy. Dominance hierarchy A, B, C, thousands of them across thousands of years. What's central to all of them? That's the pyramid of value. What question do you need answered about the pyramid of value? What's at the top? Because that's the ideal. That's the eye at the top of the pyramid. The golden Buddha in the lotus. It's the same thing. The same thing as the crucifix. And that has to do with something like the voluntary acceptance and therefore transcendence of suffering. 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 The voluntary acceptance and therefore transcendence of suffering. These are not arbitrary ideas. They're deeply rooted in biology and culture. They're as deeply rooted in biology as the dominance hierarchy is rooted in biology. We already know the answer to that. The dominance hierarchy has been around for 350 million years. It's a long time. You don't get to just brush that off and say, well, morality is some sort of second order cognitive problem. It's like, no, it's not. You have a counter at the bottom of your brain that keeps track of where you are in terms of your status, and it bloody well regulates the sensitivity of your emotions. So if you're at the bottom of the hierarchy, barely clinging on to the world, everything overwhelms you. And that's because you're damn near dead. And so everything should overwhelm you. You've got no extra resources. You're sunk. And if you're nearer the top, then your serotonin levels go up, you're less sensitive to negative emotion, you're less impulsive, you live longer, everything works in your favor, your immune system functions better, and you're oriented at least to some degree towards the medium and long-term future. And you can afford that because all hell isn't breaking loose around you all the time. And so then the question is there a way of being that increases the probability that you're going to move up dominance hierarchies? Well, that doesn't seem to be a particularly provocative proposition. The same thing as the crucifix. And that has to do with something like the voluntary acceptance and therefore transcendence of suffering. 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 The voluntary acceptance and therefore transcendence of suffering. Okay, so back to Jung. Jung believed that once we had stopped populating the cosmos with gods, that they went inside. Think about it this way. Archaic person looks at the sky, uses his imagination to populate the sky. What's the sky? Well, it's the constellations. It's the domain of the...
There we go.
Yeah, so Mike, the only thing I would say is that like you can hit your I was into Zen for a while, and my Zen master said that It was part of a bigger joke, but it was like if you hit yourself in the head with a hammer, like it feels pretty good to stop. So you can inflict self harm, and then when that ceases, you feel better. But I think what Peterson is saying there is that it's like you set your life up so that you're taking enough risk that you might encounter suffering. It's not your goal, but you're right at the edge of falling off the cliff sometimes, and that is what that gives you something that happiness can't.
Right, right. And if you're if you're always seeking it, you're just not going to achieve it. Um, uh, Dave, I sent you a YouTube link there.
Mm-hmm.
Can you play that real quick? It's
Oops, it's
this is
playing.
I thought of this morning when I was thinking this, and this whole thing was actually the result of a um,
Oops.
that was a rabbit hole coming in from that came from the riots. So this is Captain Kirk from Star Trek Five.
Oh, nice.
Oh snap!
This is a great great quote here.
What have you done to my friends? I've done nothing. This is who they are. Didn't you know that?
No, I didn't.
Now learn something about yourself.
No, I refuse.
Jim, try to be open about this.
About what? I've made the wrong choices in my life? I turned left when I should have turned right? I know what my weaknesses are. I don't need Cybok to take me on a tour of them.
If you just unbend and all.
And be brainwashed by this con man?
I was wrong. This con man took away my pain.
Damn it, Bones, you're a doctor. You know that pain and guilt can't be taken away with the wave of a magic wand. They're the things we carry with us, the things that make us who we are. If we lose them, we lose ourselves. I don't want my pain taken away. I need my pain.
Damn it, Bones.
So there you can just see Cybok is like the UN. It's trying to take away everyone's pain, trying to sell them something that in the end ends up destroying Cybok. He dies at the end of that movie, but gets killed by the very entity he was seeking out. But this all kind of started with me with the rabbit hole I was going down last night, and this starting with the UN riot or not the riots in Minneapolis, going throughout the country, and the way I look at what's going on in Minneapolis lately, they've been calling for disbandment by the police of the police, right? And this came from started from one councilman, Jeremiah. Let's see, what's his name? Jeremiah something or other. His father's an attorney general in that state. Anyway, not important. Anyway, he was arrested a few years ago during the $15 an hour protests, and he also pushes for rent control on landlords and all the socialist stuff. He's a social justice warrior. And so he's calling for disbandment of the police. Now, it's easy for us to jump on and say, yeah, we agree with that. And I've been going kind of back and forth with a few people, responding to them. Their question is, would you support disbandment of the police? And so I support the third answer. And then I sent him the video of the interview that we did with Dale Brown at Anarchapulco.
Oh, man.
And that would be my answer. That's the third answer. I mean, maybe we can post that. We need to post that up too and get that out there, because that's the third answer that everyone forgets. You can let the market do it. You don't need the state to do it. But what's going to happen, and I don't know for sure if this is the intent, but it could very well be the result, and that is disband the police and bring in UN peacekeeping forces, because Minneapolis is one of the centers for the UN in the United States. The United Nations, United States has a chapter there, and they have their own mock council, UN council at the university there, and so the people calling for disbandment of the police are very much aware of the fact that they are a United States center for UN activities. Now, if you have civil unrest going on there and you have no more police, they're actively calling for a new paradigm in law enforcement in Minneapolis. Then would it not make sense that they would suggest bringing in UN peacekeeping forces or some sort of UN police force? And so someone asked me, what's the solution? Well, you get the solution. You go into unnwo.org, and you can kind of find the solution. They're trying to pitch happiness to you, right? So my answer to this guy, so here's what he asked me. So what's the plan then? Spread knowledge, insulate yourself, try to ride out the storm, find or create pockets of freedom. And this was my answer to him. And this was kind of half written last night and half written this morning as I thought about it. Spreading knowledge is fine, but most people, even the ones who listen, will be compelled to cooperate because it sounds easier. Riding out the storm will be necessary to so avoid cities. Whether it's pockets of freedom or individuals more on their own, it has to be decentralized. Plans can be defeated once they are discovered. Communism always collapses, but not before a lot of people either die of starvation or execution. This is part of the cycle. Expecting anything other than human nature is foolhardy. The UN pitching the idea that they will bring happitalism to the world is another way of promising a communist utopia. So it will end in absolute misery, as it always does. Their promise of happiness without adversity. Their promise of a utopia or capitalism is the ultimate con for the ultimate con job. Besides, there can be no happiness without adversity. The game is to promise a world free of worry and pain, which is like a shyster promising guaranteed riches on a real estate investment, then running off with the money. No one wants pain, but everyone needs it. And that's what they'll get in abundance. The reaction will be to cower to it and to do anything to minimize it by cooperating, in the hope that someday having that utopia, or in the words of Bertrand Russell, they will learn to love their servitude. As they become normalized to it, they will convince themselves that their servitude is the promised utopia, and if they are not filled with joy as a slave to their masters, then something is wrong with them, and they will seek relief with the help of prescribed drugs. Fear of suffering is their key tool. People see the uphill ride as never ending and can't see the downhill ride that will come after because they are linear thinkers. In the world of in the words of Captain Kirk in Star Trek V, I don't want my pain taken away. I need my pain. It is not something that I am very good, and I was talking about me, that I am not very good at, but need to work on. I think that is our first goal, to learn to appreciate our pain and make it known so that we cannot be conned with UN bullcrap, promises of happitalism. Thank you for asking that question and blah, blah, blah. So that was my answer back. And that was this morning. I realized that the first thing we have to do is to learn to love our pain, because our pain is going to keep us from being conned, and it's what is going to provide us with the happiness thereafter. So that was my rabbit hole.
That's cool. David Goggins he has some stuff about that too, and he might take it a little bit far, but I mean, he takes it as far as he needs to. But one of the things that he says is that if you can get through the things that you hate doing, that's where greatness lies. Like whatever your definition of greatness is, it's on the other side of something that you hate doing, which is why you define it as greatness. They're like, those ideas are intermingled. And that's why when you do something, like if you're doing work that's fun, that you naturally enjoy, like that's really satisfying. It can be really meaningful too. But it almost feels, if you just do the work that's fun all the time, it starts to feel cheap, even if you're getting everything done. It's like every once in a while you need to get to the other side of something that you just despise doing. And then you step back and look at it and go, man, I really was not looking forward to that, but that is sweet. That looks good. Like, yeah, there's all sorts of.
Yeah, I think David and I have talked about this in regards to cycling and stuff. And I've always lived on hills or above, wherever I go for the day. And it kind of sucks because you can never enjoy the ride down knowing that you're going to have to bike back up it in the evening. But doing a big uphill in the morning makes going down at the end of the day a lot easier.
Jump right in.
Right.
I got your lottery answer queued up here. I think you sent that lottery.
Yeah.
And I got the Target Liberty, which you should jump into. Let me.
This was in regards to Mike's comment about how people who win lotteries generally don't end up very well, and I think it's because they're not honest with themselves. But this guy takes it a different direction.
Okay.
We're here at the line where people are doing it the old-fashioned way. They're just filling out bubbles here. I want to turn some of these people around and ask you guys, sir, can I ask you what your lucky numbers are?
I'm going to pick 14, 24, 2, 7, and 15.
Oh, those are your lucky numbers. Can I tell you do you know your chances of winning?
Slim to none.
Slim to none. You're right. Let me tell you, it's 1 out of 292 million. What do you think about that?
I knew it.
You knew it. Your numbers are lucky, though. Am I right?
I hope so.
Can I ask you, if you won all the money, what would you do with it?
Bunch of hookers and cocaine.
Oh, okay. Not good. We're looking for a different answer. That's probably not the answer that we're looking for. All right.
$500 million can make a huge difference in someone's life. Ophelia, thank you.
Was that Kaepernick?
What's that?
Was that Colin Kaepernick?
I don't know.
Never mind. No, it wasn't.
Yeah, he had it all figured out. 500 million can make a big difference in someone's life.
Yeah.
One way or another. It doesn't necessarily have to be the good way, right?
Yeah, well, during the lockdown that everybody knows, if you haven't gotten the memo, the lockdown was BS, and I think like almost everybody has gotten the memo. But during the lockdown, especially in the feeling out phase, and it was like, well, what's really going on early on? My buddies, a buddy who works at the wood shop and welder friend. It was really easy to sign up for government assistance in Canada. Way easier. Like in the States, they just mailed you a check, but in Canada, they just direct deposited it in your account. It was even easier. And money wasn't a problem for either of them. The problem was free time and nothing, not just free time, but nothing to do. Like if my one buddy, Mike, like he really likes fishing, and fishing season wasn't open. And then when it was, you couldn't go and get a license, and the parks were closed and stuff like that. Not that they were hunting people down, but they were threatening to a little bit. And so he had all this free time, and he had plenty of money, and he was not having a super fun time with it. He wanted something to do. And we ended up working on my 93 Buick, which was pretty sweet. He helped out tremendously. We did some metal fab on it. It was awesome. And the same with my friend Chris. He was only laid off for a couple weeks, maybe 1.5 weeks, because the wood shop was in high demand. But during that 1.5 weeks, he was not having a great time. Not having a great time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the
the
happiness UBI thing just does not, the universal basic income thing doesn't solve that problem.
So I'll try to tie this back in. I've been watching, there's this really good documentary guy. He makes documentaries that end up on BBC, and his name is Adam Curtis. And his kind of famous one, or the one I ran into first on the YouTube algorithm, was hypernormalization. But he's got a bunch of stuff from the late 90s through the early and mid 2000s. And in hypernormalization, he was talking about the Occupy Wall Street and the Arab Spring and all these kind of revolutions that fizzled. And his point was that social media and technology brought these people together, but once they got together, it could provide no guidance as to which direction to go. The technology can't give you direction. It's just a tool, but people look towards it like an oracle of truth. And once you get going, it then abandons you because it can't give you the answer you're looking for. But people keep pawing, trying to get deeper, and there's just nothing there. So in that case, technology was not able to provide the answers. But I think that's applicable to narratives of the state and stuff like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys remember? That reminds me of something I was thinking of yesterday. Do you remember in the first Toy Story movie when the guys get stuck in the stuffy vending machine,
Mm-hmm.
and they're in there with the aliens, and the aliens all worship the claw?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna.
The claw, it decides who goes and who stays.
Yeah.
A stranger from the outside.
Greetings. I am Buzz Lightyear. I come in peace.
Re-energize yourself with a slice of pepperoni. Now boarding counter 3.
This is an intergalactic emergency. I need to commandeer your vessel to Sector 12. Who's in charge here?
Claw is our master. Claw chooses who will go and who will stay.
This is ludicrous.
Hey, Bozo, you got a brain in there? Take that!
Oh no! Sid! Get down!
What's gotten into you, Sheriff?
You are the one that decided to climb into this.
Claw, it moves. I have been chosen. Farewell, my friends. I go on to a better place.
Gotcha. A Buzz Lightyear? No way!
Anyway.
Yeah. So who's running the claw?
Right, who's running the claw? And I think the kid ends up. I don't know. I don't remember what happens to the alien, but yeah.
I remember I thought the alien got chewed up by the dog.
Okay.
I think so. That's how I remember that.
The claw is like your technology and George Soros money.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Sid's like the UN, right?
Yeah, right.
Jeez.
Josh, you threw up this link by Mr. Robert Wenzel.
Yeah. It's just an interesting article from a libertarian or freedom point of view on cops, whether they should be defunded. Like you mentioned earlier, in Minnesota, there's a few people that are trying to defund the police departments. And, I forget who that lady is there, a Muslim lady that. Oh, I thought she was in the story, but she's not. Anyways, he just kind of goes around with it. And, while he's definitely for defunding all police organizations like we all are, he was saying, in this certain circumstance, the people that want to defund them, their alternative is way worse. because they're not going to just not have anything at all. Something will replace it. Too big of a vacuum.
Mm-hmm. He looks like he doesn't name names here, but like the idea of bringing in, UN peacekeepers, I'm sure is right on the tip of their tongue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
And
like
it
setting
might
up a
work
race
for
war
them
so
too,
that-
because you don't see a whole lot of homegrown, riots at the United Nations building. I think most of the time, whenever there's a get together, a protest or riot there, a lot of people from out of the country show up for it also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's never 50,000 Americans marching against the United Nations building.
Right. And it looks like they're trying to set up a race war so that they can do that. And they're talking about police shootings of blacks, and they only mentioning blacks. But how about that? How about that white guy that was shot in the hotel in I think it was Las Vegas, riddled with bullets because someone called the cops on him for having a rifle that turned out to be part of his extermination business. He was an exterminator that shot poison for roaches, right?
Yeah, not the cop
remember that
kind
guy?
of extermination.
Yeah, the guy was on the floor with his hands up, and it didn't matter. He reached to pull his shorts up, and he just got riddled with bullets. That guy got off. That cop got off, and he eventually got fired, and then he was rehired so that he could have his pension. And how about there's another white guy.
That video, I thought it was a good title was "Sudden Death." Simon Says.
Yeah, that one. That's the one. And then there was the other guy, and he was a white guy. He was an autistic guy sitting on a sidewalk with a toy truck, and his caretaker, who was black, was on the ground with his hands in the air like this. Didn't matter. Cop shot anyway. So it's not a race issue. It's a state issue. And the answer is going to be to bring in more state, but this time it should be a global state. And that's, for some reason, that's going to be better.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the conversations I've been having with some people about the police is that it's showing how much we need the police. Right, things have been peaceful for a long time, so it's easy to criticize the police state. But when things go wrong, are you saying that you wouldn't? This is the question that's posed to me. Are you saying that you wouldn't want to have the police right now?
But it hasn't been peaceful though.
Well, relatively peaceful. Businesses aren't. There hasn't been rioting like what's going on right now.
Well, if there were no cops, would the black guy have been killed by a cop? So
that's yeah. So if you take a
riot right now, anyway,
there's an issue with the time scale that the conversation is. It's like if you take a snapshot of how things are right now, it's like, yeah, you probably need. It's a bad situation. You probably need some group to fix it, but it doesn't look at how the situation came to be in the first place.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about that on that interview with Dale Brown with the Detroit Threat Management Center. And he, one thing, when they started out, they carried guns. They're very effective. Not the guns, the Detroit Threat Management Center. Then they stopped carrying guns because they realized they don't actually work for anything. And they haven't had any issues. I think they had, what do you say, 5 people who had been shot. They lost no one. And they were, one of the situations was one of their officers got caught in the middle of a shootout, 2 other parties shooting at each other. But they're able to resolve conflicts very peacefully. They don't have to arrest anyone. It's not part of their agenda. They massively reduce the crime. Detroit Threat Management Center.
And what do they do?
It's basically a private security firm, and they provide security for both paying customers and people who can't pay.
Okay.
Essentially. So
if you were a subscriber to Patriot's Lament, Corey, you would have got a notification when we put that video up.
Yeah, you had like an hour-long interview with him.
I was asking for people who haven't.
Oh yeah,
haven't been
yeah.
following.
Go to Patriots Lament YouTube channel and look up the Dale Brown interview from Acapulco, and that one right there. That's Dale Brown right there.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, he's awesome to listen to, and he actually has practical answers for all these questions that people have. What would you do if you didn't have the police? Here's your answer.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, you were talking about them being armed.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, they don't wear, at least at the point of this interview, they don't wear firearms any longer because they realize they're more or less useless in those situations.
His let's check out history. His comment. Here it is. We won't get too far into it. You guys can read this. Dale Brown's comment was that if a conflict gets to the point of using violence to solve it, the security personnel have already failed.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that was their conclusion was they've had 5 personnel shot in 25 years or whatever. None of them lethal, and they've never killed somebody that they're pursuing, and no one that they're protecting has been killed either in 25 years. And a lot of the people that they help out are like domestic violence victims who have, a boyfriend or a husband or a pimp or whatever who's trying to kill them, who's chasing them down.
Mm-hmm.
And they've gone to the police or something, and the police can't issue them private security.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are actually fairly difficult people to protect because people know where they are. So he had this story. He told about this kid when he was out there, when Dale Brown was patrolling, and they were doing this. They were patrolling this neighborhood, and there's this kid walking through, and he's in a hoodie. He's scoping the neighborhood in a dark hoodie, kind of walking around, looking around. And so they pull up next to him. Dale pulls up next to him in his van, and he says, "Hey, just wanted you to know this is a pretty dangerous neighborhood, and we want to make sure that you're safe. A lot of people have been victims of violence here. They've been mugged or their house has been broken into, and it looks like you might not be familiar with the neighborhood. You're checking it out, looking for threats, and we actually patrol this neighborhood, so we're going to help you out with that. We're just going to follow you. We're going to go 30, 40 feet back. We're just going to follow you. Feel free, go on your walk or whatever. This isn't the best neighborhood to go in, so you might want to walk somewhere else, that's safer. But as long as you're here, we're going to be following you and protecting you and watching out for you. And if the cops show up, we'll verify that you're okay to be here, and we'll make sure they don't harass you or anything." Mm. And he said the guy was so freaked out by that, he made a beeline back home. He was like immediately gone. And he said when they encounter people and meet them in that fashion, they never see them again. They never come back.
And it doesn't escalate either.
It doesn't escalate. Yeah, exactly.
And here's the great part that I think most people don't know about is that if you wish you could have this in your community, they offer franchises. He's setting up franchises and will train people to set up your own threat management center in your community.
Yep.
So
you can go to their training course in Detroit, and then you can franchise it. It's really cool. His whole approach to violence management is fascinating. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, it is, and he's a super intelligent guy. I mean, I remember after the interview we were talking with him, and he could have his own stand-up comic show.
Oh, he could. Yeah,
he was awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, he's really intelligent. What he set up is just amazing. But that's the practical answer to all these questions that people have about what would you do if you didn't have the police.
Hmm. What was interesting? Yeah, go for it.
This reminds me of Ron Paul's thing about it's being easier to end the wars than it is to end the welfare state. Because it's been this way for so long that it's not just a policy change; it's changing people's belief systems, which is a much slower process.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, or possibly not possible on a large scale.
Mhm.
Josh and I were talking about that a little bit. Like, states have this appeal where they have a eternal unfulfilled promise of solving problems that can't be solved outside of your own community. And everybody knows they can't be solved. It's like we were talking about Sleepy Joe last night. Like, how could you nominate Sleepy Joe of all people? He's obviously senile. And everybody knows that politicians are, in general, B-grade performers at best. It's the kid who would like poop his pants in class and then reach down and pull it out and put it on the desk. Those. I mean, in general, and everybody knows that, and yet everybody looks to politicians for answers that they know they could never implement themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never going to happen. It never has happened. It never will happen. Certainly isn't happening now. But it's this promise. It's this unfulfillable promise. It's like you said, it's the elevator that only goes up or the hill that only goes down.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's like a people thing. But communities, small communities can certainly break away from that. Dale Brown's interview, it's fascinating. During his interview, the thing that I was thinking about, he was talking about how threat management people encounter and interact with unexpected people in the neighborhood. And it's the same way that a good neighborhood does. Like when somebody new, if you have neighbors who greet everybody, you're going to greet the person who's just walking through, looking at the nice houses and the flowers, just the same as you're going to greet the guy who's trying to scope houses.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the interaction, it's the friendly, supportive, attentive interaction with malicious threats that Dale Brown said is so effective. Like, hey, we pay attention to everyone who comes in here. We give everyone attention, and we make sure that everyone is here to interact positively with the community. The people who scope in neighborhoods don't want to be in a community where people are paying attention to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're wearing the hoodie.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, back to your point about politicians. There was a good politician that was elected in Alaska, in the town of Talkeetna. Remember? Didn't they have a cat?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I'm serious. No, I'm being serious. That's kind of a funny thing, but I'm being serious. Maybe we should. Do any of you have a cat? Should we run a cat for mayor or for borough mayor or something?
Didn't Frank Turney vote for Daffy Duck or something like that?
I think so, but I maybe we should. Yeah, I think so. But I think we should put.
Well,
I think we should really put a cat on the ballot.
Winston voted for Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. No, if that would bring some happiness, I think, to people, wouldn't it? They could vote for the cat for borough mayor, and the cat's not going to ban wood burning. Right?
Well, that's the interesting. No, well, probably not. The people who interpret what the cat says become rather important at that point.
Yeah.
But that's like people bag on the Egyptians. They worship the sun and they worship cats.
Yeah.
And they worship the Nile and everything like that. But their outcome wasn't any worse.
Right.
Yeah. It's all a form of idolatry.
They were just in denial.
Yeah. We have a third major topic we wanted to jump into, which was that fits into the broader topic of everyone knowing that all of this is BS, and that is unemployment being at an all-time high and the market being at an all-time high at the same time. And what does that mean?
Stagflation.
I think so. I was reading Yahoo Finance yesterday. I'm trying to look for the article now. I can't find it, but pretty, fairly mainstream, but actually pretty good. And I saw this article, which was that like the guy was criticizing the market for being so high, not saying that people shouldn't be free to pay whatever they want for stuff, but saying that normal people in the country who there's massive unemployment are going to be scratching their heads as to why the stock market is approaching its all-time highs again, when there's been no recovery really for all the small businesses that got whacked. We got a YouTube commenter saying the ones suffering most are small business owners getting arrested for trying to open businesses while being looted and stuff. And that was this guy's comment, was like, how can prices of productive capacity, which is supposedly what the market is, be at an all-time high when employment's super high and when small businesses are getting whacked and when the earning power and the ability to service debt of everybody in the country is just totally in the poo right now. And he avoided that whole inflation word, and he certainly avoided the stagflation word, but he was like dancing around it. And I saw another article on Kitco where they were talking about, don't worry, gold's found a support level at 1,700. It's not going to crash back into the 1,600s. And I saw a similar article on, I think it was also in Yahoo Finance, where they were saying gold's bound to crash back to 1,650. Definitely get out of your gold positions because it's going all the way down to the mid 1,600s again. And I thought that was funny because last year, what was it at this time? 1,300?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a non-pullback, but the language that's being used around it is like, whatever you do, don't move your money there.
Well, yeah, there's part of it that's it's just foreigners moving their money into U.S. equity, but a lot of it too has to do with just fraud, and that is state money, government money. If you look at the vaccine stocks and the corona-related stocks, they're getting a lot of funding, and so some news comes out that this company has gotten their government funding, or they have a contract with the government to receive a supply of something or other. And or there's even an expectation. That's really what it is. It's an expectation, and so there's this expectation, and everyone's pumping their money into it because that's where they can. That's where the investment funds can make their cash on the expectation. The news comes out, they dump the stock, and then later on they expect new news to come out. So it's all fraud. It's all about, can we get the government money? Look at let's look at Tesla, for example. Okay, Tesla gets lots of government money, right? As does SpaceX. And so their stock is really high. It went down to, I think it was the 200s, in the 200s there for about a month and a half ago, and then now it's doubled again. But why? With the economy so bad? Well, if they didn't get government money, then Elon would be living in an electric van down by the river. But I'll probably is creative enough. He could probably come up with something to make a living. But it all comes down to fraud. A large part of it, receiving state money. It's all expectation that the government's going to hand some company a new subsidy. I mean,
Well, the Federal Reserve.
Amazon. Let's say Amazon wouldn't exist. What's that?
The Federal Reserve is buying Wall Street.
Yeah,
They're buying up. They're buying up bad debts. They're buying up ETFs. They're in the market. That's why the market's going up, because there's money being pumped into it. Doesn't have anything. I mean, it's completely disconnected from the actual economy, the real world economy, Main Street or whatever.
Yeah, they're buying up bad debt and they're exchanging it for cash to pump into the market, right? So it's like Amazon. Amazon wouldn't exist if not for the years and years of post office subsidies that they got. They didn't make a profit until like 2 years ago or something. So it's the companies that are making it big in the stock market are the ones receiving government subsidies. The money from the Fed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that affect? How do you guys think that affects regular people, especially? You know, Josh and I were talking about this. We're in year 0 of this, but this isn't like a 2008, 2009 thing. For most people, this isn't a 2008, 2009 thing.
No.
Right, in 08, 09, you had
not even comparable.
Right, yeah. You didn't have the unemployment thing then. You had a small percentage of people who made ridiculous home purchases that they couldn't even make the first payment on. And here, it's actual people losing their jobs, and it's not like a temporary thing or something like that. It's like they lose their job, and then the company closes, and then it still doesn't reopen, or by the time it does, it's still so restricted and everything that the opportunity is gone.
Or the business model has been absorbed by a bigger corporation.
Yeah, that's actually more accurate for sure. Yep.
Or there is no model for it anymore.
I
mean, certain things, it's just going to be just too hard for some people to get through it.
Subsidy hunting is the new model.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw an article too a few days ago about, I think it was on the Newsminder, or Newsminder, I mean. It was talking about the upcoming house defaults. So that's an expected result here coming up pretty soon. So then you're going to have a whole bunch of people losing their houses, real estate prices fall because of it, and then what money are they going to have to pay rent? Are we going to end up with a bunch of homeless people, or are we going to end up with the government coming in with subsidized rents? What are they going to do at that point?
You know what they do in Spain? This is really interesting. When I was in Madrid a couple of years ago, the guy giving us a tour, he was simultaneously talking about how broke Spain is and how expensive rent in Madrid was. But that Madrid has a lot of poor people there. And I said, how does that work? And he's like, the government. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, as the rent prices have gone up, the government's just made a rent subsidy. I think it was 300 euros when I was there. So everybody in Madrid, if you couldn't make rent, the government would give you $300 to cover the difference. And then I said, what if rent goes up again? He's like, they'll just increase the subsidy. So it was this game of, it was a runaway.
Which injects more money, and it forces the rent to go up.
It forces the rent to go up. Yeah, it's a chicken and the egg, right? And I was like, that's not a sustainable solution. He's like, yeah, it's not.
So everyone lives in Section 8 housing. Yeah.
Right. I didn't say it was a sustainable solution. I just said that's how it works.
Well, with your question about asking basically what Main Street, the little people, their attitudes towards Wall Street. About a month ago, we saw where the richest 11 dudes in the world made another $40 billion while the rest of us were locked up. And well, we're not people who sit around going, he makes too much money, this and that. A lot of people do. And when there's 40 million people kicked out of a job, and I imagine hundreds of thousands, if not, in the millions of small businesses closing after, those people's dream, years and years of dreaming to have something like that. There's been plenty of stories talking about businesses that were ready to open up during the lockdown for the first time, and they're already out of business. They never even got to open their doors for the first time. How do they feel about Wall Street doing fantastic? I think they're going to be pissed off about it. Think about in 2008, people were losing their houses, and there's these, too big to fail. We have to have these bailouts, $700 billion immediately. So big banks and stuff got billions and billions of dollars, and everyone else lost their homes. So this go around, I think they knew that people were going to be pissed if that happened again. So they passed, this $3 trillion bill and give $300 billion to small businesses and people. Where's the other $2.5 trillion? Where'd that go? Because they didn't just print it up and not use it. I mean, the people at the top and the people close to the positions of power are getting rich again. That's why they had to send everyone a check, which I think they're going to have to do. I think they're going to have to try UBI to calm people down, because people are mad. These riots, they're not because of the lockdown, but the lockdown filled them up with the fuel they needed to have the match thrown on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Those checks, the $1,200 checks, were only an eighth of that $3 trillion bill. 12%.
Yep.
Paying people off is cheap.
Yeah, that's true.
If the prize is the whole economy.
Yeah. I think people are seeing that as BS as well, like in the same way they're seeing the lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are seeing through that too, because it's not the asymmetry in how well the plan is working for different people is really obvious, and it's obvious quickly. Like, it's only June, right? This whole thing really didn't kick off till like February or March. I mean, we're in year zero still. We haven't even made it to year one.
Seems like years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're past the unemployment rate that was the peak during the Great Depression. It took 3 years to get to that point. It's taken a couple of months here.
Oh, but Mike, you know that depression indexes there's a time element, right? You can't go directly to a Great Depression.
Yeah, 2 quarters of recession of this, and then we can call it a depression.
It's like everyone's crossed the finish line. The guy with the watch is still like, and the winner.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to suffer a little longer where it qualifies.
Okay. So there's a bunch of stuff going on, but all the riots seem to have one flavor, which is BLM and Floyd. Mm-hmm. So, but we've never had riots like this before. There was Ferguson and others in the past few years, but it seems like it takes all the movements and turns it into this one, and that's a discussion that you can't really have, because it has to be about in the social narrative, it has to be about what the rioters or the protesters say it is. But I think that there's a lot of unhappiness that's coming out for various reasons, but it's manifesting in one. Otherwise your movement gets fragmented. So this the Floyd thing keeps the cohesion of the movement together. But okay, so I don't know what, banks on Wall Street did it again, and they took the money. Taking it out on small businesses doesn't help, and violence doesn't work in the long run. Mm-hmm. But that won't keep people from trying. So,
yeah, they would have to destroy their idol, and that never happens, or it rarely happens.
How so? What's the idol?
The state.
Oh yeah.
It always ends up replaced by a new idol that's much more benevolent until it's not.
I was also thinking that idol is materialism, which goes hand in hand with the banks. It's like the banks got the money and they can buy the stuff, but everybody wants the stuff too. So they would have to change their values in order to become less like to so that they have different goals than the banks do. Otherwise, they're just competing with. They just lost, right? They're in a competition with the banks for material goods.
Yeah, and that's a lot of that's just the it's the state or it's the false god luring people back to itself. The excess material items.
Yeah.
The one other element is I saw Carrie Knoll mentioned in the comments, and it's like what just happened to the middle class? Is there still a middle class? And to get a little, it's hard to move. It's hard to move without money, and so a lot of people now are kind of trapped wherever they are, and maybe they had plans to start something in another country or go somewhere or have options, and a lot of those doors just closed for a lot of people. And I'm not saying that that's intentional, but that goes with the kind of thing that just happened. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something that has been. I know it's something that's been expected for years that would be what they would do, essentially close the borders. But what method would they use to do it has always been a question. Now we see the method that they use.
Just take away the money. So you...
take away the money, pandemic, false pandemics, and basically just shut down travel between nations. The next would be, well, I won't say the next immediate step, but one of the next steps is going to be a massive war, and that's plenty of people are going to have jobs. There's not going to be an issue of unemployment at that point. They're all going to get paid as soldiers. Right? Because that's what happens. You shut the borders down, you shut the trade down. That's when the wars start. And the U.S. has essentially eliminated flights from China, passenger flights from China. China's done the same. They're talking about opening up a few. What is it, like 2 flights a month or something? I think I saw. And so that'll just continue back and forth. The level of trust between the U.S. and China has degraded greatly. The U.S. is accusing China of the virus. China is accusing the U.S. of the virus. It's all nonsense. Each one wants to investigate the other. China has lifted restrictions. The U.S. has lifted restrictions on suing China, so now someone can just sue China, say, I got coronavirus, I'm going to sue China. So that's one of the steps involved in getting a war going, is removing that sovereign immunity between governments, which, that's a gray area for us, I know, but regardless, we know what the result is. So the result is going to be a war, a shooting war at some point. And yeah, there'll be plenty of jobs for you then. But that's honestly that's going to be one of the next steps in shutting down the borders.
Do you think people, like these narratives that are coming out, people have identified them pretty quickly? Like I'm actually, to the degree I'm disappointed It's also been interesting to see how people have either gotten bored with it or identified it as BS
Mm-hmm.
as the whole string of them come out. And I it'd be interesting to see if any of them. I mean, the censorship has actually made it easier to identify false narratives. Just look for the person who's being shut down. Like that's how you find the truth. And a lot of mainstream people, like those doctors' videos that we played on the show. Josh was pointing this out yesterday. Um, a bunch of like regular radio hosts and stuff like that have seen those videos. All those doctors who got super censored and deleted off YouTube, and you have to go on BitChute or Library or something to find them. That's showing up in all these other normal channels. And so I wonder if the recalibrated BS detectors that people have will interfere with the war narrative, because that certainly is being tested right now.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. They were calling the BS on the Corona stuff for a little while before the riots started. It's almost as if they wanted the riots to keep things going because people were realizing what BS it was. So, are they increasing the rate of introduction of new crises because people figure it out faster? Is it because they want to overwhelm people with fear? They always want to. They do want to do that. It's overwhelm people with fear, and then they will just succumb and do as you tell them to do.
Works until it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right.
Well, I think we've done a fairly good job here on a quick wrap up of what's been going on in the last 3 weeks since our last broadcast. Do you guys have anything else that's burning that you want to get out there? And then we can wrap it up.
Not I.
No, I'm pretty much done.
Okay.
So I was just thinking about power vacuum and the state and all this, and it's like when you have people are calling for the abolition of the police and authority, and when you have I'd say that there's if the stuff about China is true with the camps in Mongolia and stuff like that, there are bigger wolves out there than the U.S. government, and I'm wondering what the kind of anarchist response to getting protection from the jurisdiction which you find yourself against larger threats. It's like be careful what you're criticizing, because it has worked out some kind of power balance with other forces in the world.
Yeah, that's like Wenzel's cautionary article.
It might seem bad now, but it could be worse in the future, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what's at play. We're gonna see a collapse of like the European Union, the euro, and all of that, and as well as the U.S. government. And what comes after that? Well, the financial capital of the world is moving to Asia. So will we be under the jurisdiction of the Chinese government or some Asian government? I don't know. Will the UN model itself after the Chinese system with a social credit score? I think that's the intent. But we are not living in the geographic center of that system. The poor Chinese are. And will that matter in the future? There's some people that project that the U.S. population is going to drop by 2/3 by 2025, and the U.S. military budget is going to drop by 95% and all of that by 2025. Is that because they are planning on this system failing and being replaced with a new one, and this just being like a third world, or at least very least second world, just a nation, not even a nation, just a population, a territory. I don't know. Could be.
Happy-talism.
Happy-talism. That's what they're promising is happy-talism. So it could be it could just end up being, maybe their intent is to make it so miserable in that situation that we're going to succumb and fall for the con job.
Yeah,
well,
we'll see.
Bringing it back to your bike ride, Mike, if they make everyone very unhappy, it will be cheap to introduce a little bit of happiness.
Yep.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, it's like, I mean, we live with a population that believes that they can take 50% of your money by force, give you 10% back, and call it generous. So they're already trained.
Yeah, well, that's breaking down.
Yeah.
That's breaking down. Cool. Well, it's good catching up with you guys again on all of this stuff. And good seeing some YouTube commenters and some streamers. We will be back. Well, we'll be back more often now that we're all kind of set up, get back in the groove here.
Yeah.
And looking forward to get some callers on the next broadcast.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming on. Yeah.
And just want to remind everyone, things aren't as bad as they seem. They're much, much worse.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably true.
Awesome. Yeah, well, on that note, we will check in with you guys next week.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, bye. Yeah.
Talk later.